The Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch is one of the most celebrated and recognizable watches in the world, famous for being the first worn on the moon. But despite being so familiar, there's still a lot about it we've just never noticed. So here are 10 things you've never seen on the Omega Speedmaster. Some of them are really quite impressive. The Speedmaster boasts about its terrible water resistance. Perhaps you've noticed the design but never stopped to think about it. On the case back, assuming you get the Hesselite version, there's an embossed hippocampus right in the middle. A Greek mythological creature that pulled Neptune's chariot, the symbol was borrowed by Omega engraver Jean-Pierre Ball from the hippocampus-shaped mooring points on the sides of Venetian gondolas. They are said to protect the gondola and its occupants, and so the meaning was transferred to the 1957 Omega Seamaster to also protect it from the dangers of the water, or rather to indicate that it was water resistant. It wasn't just the Seamaster that was blessed with this symbol though. Despite only having a water resistance today of 50 meters, which is barely splash-proof by conventional standards, the Speedmaster 2 features the hippocampus, perhaps just in case they discovered any water on the moon. There's a secret Omega logo on the caseback. It looks like a little globe with the Omega logo on it. Omega first started laser engraving it in 2004 in a bid to stop Costco importing grey market watches and selling them in the US for well below RRP. The idea was that this new copyrighted logo would cause Costco to be infringing copyright law by selling the watch without Omega's permission, thus controlling the aftermarket price and having greater control over its distribution. Costco argued that Omega's authorized distribution of the produce within the US extinguished Omega's right to prevent resale. However, the Ninth Circuit claimed this first sale doctrine only applied to products manufactured in the US. Costco appealed to the Supreme Court, who reached a tied decision, and so the matter was returned to the Ninth Court. This time, Omega's case was overruled, stating that the watchmaker had misused copyright law to expand its monopoly. The case rumbled on for over 10 years, with Omega eventually required to pay Costco's legal fees. The Speedmaster's case is asymmetric. It hasn't always been. Early versions of the Speedmaster featured a completely symmetric case, with the crown and pushers hanging off board for clear and functional use. This was true of many chronograph watches of the late 1950s and early 1960s, and indeed many watches overall. Even the rugged dive watch, the Rolex Submariner, didn't grow its crown guards until 1959. These little protrusions prevented the delicate crown from receiving a sidewards knock, bending or even breaking the sealing and setting mechanisms in the crown. For a chronograph, however, the risk of breaking the crown is much lower, since the watch was designed for use timing things like race cars. However, when it became apparent that astronauts Walter Schirra, Gordon Cooper, and Ed White had been using their own Speedmasters in space, Omega figured it couldn't hurt making the watch a bit more robust. As well as evolving the twisted lyre lugs, the Speedmaster also filled out left and right, but not evenly. The crown side grew thicker, with the crown and pushers becoming inset into the case to protect them. It's a very elegant look, far more considered than a pair of simple crown guards. There's a teeny tiny Omega logo on the crystal. For the Hesselite version only, the horseshoe-shaped Omega logo is engraved on the underside, right in the center. It's been done like that since the 1950s and doesn't appear on the Sapphire versions. It's not always the right way up, but being on the underside, there's no fear of removing it as you polish the scratches out from time to time. The Omega logo, and indeed name, originally came from a movement produced by the watchmaker in 1885. First called the Labrador because of its dependability, this new movement, manufactured with an industrial process that allowed the interchangeability of parts without modification, was a revelation. An evolution of that movement 10 years later was one that the brand considered the movement to end all movements. The Omega. The name stuck, and the watchmaker officially became known as Omega from 1903. The Speedmaster's 12 o'clock marker looks like a Johnson. Right from the beginning in 1957, the 12 o'clock marker on the Omega Speedmaster has been differentiated with 2 balls either side of the main shaft. Many watches use a standout design for the 12 o'clock marker on the dial to make orientation in poor visibility easier, with the Seamaster, for example, using a triangle. No other Omega appears to use the same dash and dots emblem as the Speedmaster, and the reason why makes quite a bit of sense. The Speedmaster, being a chronograph, has a center seconds that rests at 12 when not in use, otherwise obscuring the stick marker. Having the 2 dots either side not only helps to locate the 12 o'clock marker, it also indicates when the chronograph seconds hand is at rest by the absence of the central marker and the visibility of just the balls. Oh hello, I didn't see you there. I was too busy enjoying all this fantastic new channel merch, and you can too. So if you want to be as cool as me, or perhaps even cooler, check it out just below the video. Thanks very much. There are 8 different fonts on the Speedmaster. Explore the dial in case of the Hesselite Speedmaster and it soon becomes apparent that Omega are not paying by the font, because there's a lot of them. It's not so bad that every instance of text uses an entirely unique font, because, for example, the professional script on the front matches the subdial numbers, and the logo text is identical to the outer text on the caseback. But nevertheless, that still leaves a whopping 8 different types of script. There's the branding, the model, the word professional, tachymeter, the bezel numbers, the flight qualified statement, the hippocampus Speedmaster text, and not forgetting the stainless steel inscription down on the lower left lug. The Hesselite Moonwatch has a different bracelet to the Sapphire Moonwatch. It's the little details that make choosing so hard, and whilst Omega has very kindly updated the bracelet to be, finally, tapered again, it's not like the Hesselite and Sapphire versions share exactly the same design. Based on the late 60s iteration of the Speedmaster bracelet that introduced curved links, the difference between them is very small indeed, but it's still there. The difference comes in the form of a detail introduced in the 1990s, an inner edge lip on both of the outer links. For the mildly cheaper Hesselite version, the brushed finish is continued all the way through, making those inner edges much subtler and closer to the 60s version. For the slightly more expensive Sapphire version, those edges are polished instead, reflecting the era when the crystal was eventually updated to Sapphire. The Hesselite Moonwatch gets a cheaper logo. Unlike the bracelet design, which is more original on the Hesselite version of the Moonwatch over the Sapphire one, the printed logo is, surprisingly, a newer addition. It first appeared in 1969 and was part of the same cost-saving measures that replaced the caliber 321 with the simpler 861. What did the printed logo replace? The original Speedmaster and several iterations after had a more pronounced applied logo in metal, crisp and shiny, and in keeping with the brand's reputation for going the extra mile in quality. For today's Moonwatch, the cheaper Hesselite version does without, whereas the posher, pricier Sapphire fitted edition gets an applied logo, albeit not in the original style, but perhaps ironically in the updated style introduced when Omega swapped to print. Omega made a sneaky Speedmaster clasp upgrade. When the latest Moonwatch was introduced, the bracelet was given a full overhaul to incorporate a more original design, more comfortable taper, and generally better build quality that sat more in line with its not insignificantly increased price. But there was still a crucial feature missing that many collectors bemoaned: the lack of on-the-fly adjustment. It was a small price to pay to own such a legendary watch, however, and so most overlooked this little flaw. That didn't stop Omega updating the clasp anyway, however, switching the spring bar micro adjust to a push-button sliding mechanism in late 2022. Now owners need not fear the summer sweat, with expanding wrists easily accommodated with a quick press and pull. The caliber 3861 punches well above its weight. If you're stuck deciding whether or not to go for Hesselite over Sapphire, perhaps this will sway you. The days of plastic parts in this budget version of the 321 are long gone. There's an anti-magnetic coaxial escapement with a boost to 50 hours of power reserve, but really what impressed most is the finish. From the striping on the bridges that aligns perfectly with that of the base plate to the graining on the tangle of levers. There's a lot more going on than the price point would suggest. But here's the bit you didn't notice. The main bridges, hosting the balance, chronograph wheels and clutch, are beveled and polished. You can see from the vertical lines, however, known as chattering, that this finish is done by CNC. But the dual sinks appear to be completely chatter-free, suggesting they've been polished with a roller sinker or something similar. Still probably by machine, but it's another step closer to peak finishing. If you've spotted anything about the Moonwatch you think no one else has, let me know down in the comments below. And please do like and subscribe as well, and don't forget to wear your shoes in bed. Goodbye.